And this is another edition of 3D Printing News Unpeeled, courtesy of 3dprint.com. And today's news roundup consists of, well, news that Boeing subsidiary Aurora Flight Sciences is entering the crane game. The control of revolutionary aircraft with novel effectors. Crane is something that DARPA has been working on in a big way. They worked on it with BAE Systems and also Lockheed, and now with Boeing. They're going to go into another phase of that gets Boeing Aurora Flight Sciences a little bit closer to a completely flying X-plane with active flow control. Essentially what DARPA is trying to do here is something, well, completely revolutionary. A lot of people use revolutionary often, but this is something very, very different. That would be a very, very different way of flying than, well, since the beginning of flight, essentially. Normally, planes are steered and controlled with control surfaces. A flap or a rudder changes, and that changes the direction of the aircraft or the attitude of the aircraft. Uh, in this case, what they're trying to do is literally do away with all these kind of control surfaces and actually reshape the wing itself, or to have air injection through nozzles or other kind of devices to manipulate the air as it flows over the wing to, in effect, change the airflow without actually using a flap. Now, this has an advantage that it could be able to remove all this hydraulics systems and all the backup hydraulic systems to maintain and to steer all these flaps. And all these mechanical hydraulic systems would be able to be removed from the aircraft. That may be able to make the aircraft more stealthy. It could make it have a smaller radar cross section generally. It could make it more maneuverable as well. And it could make it more directly maneuverable in the sense that it could make it, well, as a question of a digital impulse goes directly to an actuator, or a digital impulse goes directly to an airflow thing that could actually make it faster and more responsive. Um, it could generally just be a smaller aircraft with less mass, and this is especially relevant, of course, now that we don't need necessarily always pilots. That could mean that it has higher speed, better range, or it could carry more things. And especially in a hypersonic context or a high-speed context, such a smaller aircraft would require a lot less kind of very valuable, very difficult to make materials, would make them cheaper and easier to make. Also, because the surface of the aircraft is not interrupted and there's no like kind of moving in that, you could apply coatings or uniform coatings or uniform surfaces like radio absorbent material kind of surfaces or other kind of specialized coatings to the whole entire body of the aircraft that might overall improve its performance as well. We could, for example, make an aircraft almost entirely or a large part of it could be made out of ceramics and these kind of materials. On the whole, the aircraft would be even more digital and have fewer moving parts. Now, why is this relevant to us? This is relevant to us because if we are going to try to make these optimized nozzles to eject air into the airstream, the best way to do that, of course, is 3D printing. Because through 3D printing, we can make these kind of pneumatic or these air or these compressed air systems, and we can make them more directed and have the nozzles exactly the right shape and exactly the right to optimize this flow in these right areas. So these digital type nozzles, to me, the best way to make them is through 3D printing. Also, actuation devices that are new, you would want to make this with 3D printing as well, because companies like Doman have illustrated this as well. You can make these actuator type devices with a lot less mass, and you can make them um, perform better than conventionally made ones. So this is a gigantic opportunity with 3D printing, where a new generation of aircraft, first these X planes, and we're working towards X planes here, right? So we've we've got like the demonstrator aircraft towards like a full scale X plane, and a full scale experimental X plane is already kind of, it's not like the aircraft of the future, but this is the aircraft of the future after the future, kind of, And a lot of the things in these test beds don't come true, which is why they're test beds. But having said that, this could mean that 3D printing could have a much, much bigger role to play in the future of actually this kind of new way, this crane way of driving aircraft. And that could mean that that kind of a development could usher in aircraft 3D printing in that kind of way as well. So this is a huge thing for us. Now, again, Lockheed Martin's working on this, BAE Systems is working on this, and now Boeing. Boeing is at phase two of the aircraft, and a phase three would be a full scale X-wing. So that could be really amazing. Great work there by DARPA, as always. The next thing is Formlabs. Formlabs is looking again at automation. They did a bunch of things before with robot arms. Now they're looking at a much more, well, lower cost, much more cost-effective automation. They've got an Form Auto, which is a build platform part removal solution for the machine. I've got a high volume resin system, which means that you've got 5 liters of resin storage, and we've got fleet control, which is special software to do this. I really like that Formlabs has listened to people, have looked at manufacturing, knows that people are producing tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of parts with its printers, and is now making a solution that seems really cost effective. Indeed, um, you know, to me, the promise of desktop 3D printers, in this case, Formlabs 3Bs, 3BLs, um, has always been that you have a flexible, low cost solution to manufacture lots and lots of different parts and lots of different colors at high volume. And I've been predicting this and looking at this and following this for a very long time, and I hope it comes closer. And this really does look like it comes closer. And I also like the language that Formlabs is using here. They're looking at 80% labor and reduction of reduction labor costs, reducing packaging waste by 90%, and lower cost per part of 40% when compared to their previous systems. So this is a fantastic iteration, and could make, especially in hearing aids and dental and jewelry, like a lot more business cases possible with Formlabs. And it's interesting that Formlabs is one of the only desktop companies that are really putting attention on this. And I think this is a industry winning development that they're carrying on in plain view of everyone without everyone noticing how important it is. So that's always exciting to see. So this is news from CoalPlant, and the question is it on the right track? So CoalPlant has been doing a study into its RH collagen, which is collagen material, which is 3D printed, recombinant collagen material, which is 3D printing, and it now has preclinical results, which basically are they're testing in mice or other small animals, and these preclinical results are positive, and they indicate that they should do a large animal study. They so far said there's no indication of adverse reaction. There's tissue regeneration, connective tissue. There's essentially implant replacement of the actual human tissue afterwards. And again, this is in mice, right, or something similar. But they hope to do a large animal study in 2023. Um, Now, why is this important? Now, what CoalPlant is working on is they're working on a collagen that you can 3D print, and then that would be essentially it's a breast scaffold. You could customize it. So if you're going to have a mastectomy, they could make that breast look very much like the one you had. Uh, um, and that's very important for these people, of course. And otherwise, you can have a much more natural breast. And also, on breast, at one point, the idea is that it would replace the implanted 3D printed tissue with natural breast tissue. So there wouldn't be a polymer inside your body for the long term or for the rest of your life. Now, this is especially relevant because there have been some issues at scale with standard breast implants. And so the market is huge, and the potential to help patients in mastectomies and also conventional kind of breast augmentation type of procedures is huge, which leads to a large market. Now, so this is encouraging news by CoalPlant. CoalPlant's in this for the long haul. They're going to need to do a clinical study. This is, of course, very, very expensive. So we should know that this is going on, and then this is very encouraging, but this is not going to happen tomorrow. At the same time, Bella Seno, Lattice Medical, Prayasta are also working on these kind of implants, maybe not with collagen, but other like type of materials, with all that have the idea of making a customized breast tissue that's replaced with natural tissue, and that is bioreabsorbable. And this could be a fantastic clinical 3D printing application at one point. The next news is that Braskem, the 14 billion revenue Brazilian chemical company that does PVC, polypropylene, tons of other chemicals, has bought Taulman3D. So Taulman3D is an innovative desktop 3D printing filament company that was the first one to bring really nylon to the 3D printing market, beating out some really large companies to do so. They've always been on the cutting edge. They've been a bunch of nice guys that I think what they've really done really well is, okay, A, develop materials, and B, usher in these materials with the right descriptions and the right expectation management in order to get people going without it being too overblown. And I really think that's really important. At the same time, Color Fab continues to innovate. Large chemical companies threw away a lot of money. Prusa has made a lot of really high quality filament quite affordable. So it's been very tough times for a lot of filament makers as of late. Um, this might be a kind of timely exit. Is not. I wouldn't expect this to be a very expensive exit for Braskem or for Taulman, but the Linton, Indiana-based company did a lot of really great things. And I think it's a really astute buy by Braskem. They get a bunch of experienced people who are good on the high end of the market. They get a lot of chemistries that's really outside of Braskem's wheelhouse, but the Taulman are also the guys to push Braskem chemistry. I like the fact that they get a lot of industry knowledge and a lot of industry exposure from this. And this is a very expensive, a cheap way for them to get a courtside seat to 3D printing. And they could really play in the industry. They could really develop the right products and really have a really kind of go-to market that they've purchased essentially that will continue to give them intelligence and feedback and in future maybe revenue. So I think that's a really fantastic thing, especially given where Tallman plays and kind of like the casting, nylons, high-end resins, and the fact they have a good name. So I think this is a wonderful development for both companies and for the industry as a whole. Well, anyway, thank you very much for your time today. My name is George.